Welcome everyone. We have an special guest with us today, John F. Danielich. He is now is serving as a president of Right to Freedom, and he was former U.S. diplomat of State Department, and he served 3 times in Bangladesh, and he played a crucial role during July uprising, and we are so pleased to have Mr. John F. Danielich. Welcome to our show.
Great, thanks. It's great to be here, and it's particularly special to be here in Dhaka during the month of July as we commemorate and remember the events of July, the long July in 2024.
Let me start our program with the question that you did wonderful job here. You was in Dhaka 3 times, I think.
Right.
And we want to know your experience, how you deal with the government and your experience in Dhaka.
Well, Bangladesh will always have a special place in my heart and that of my family. And I tell everyone that I owe a deep personal and professional debt to Bangladesh, that all that it gave me over the course of my career. I first arrived in 1990 as a young man, a new diplomat, and I was fortunate enough to return to Bangladesh twice more in my career. I learned a great deal during my time here. I worked in Bangladesh under various different governments when the Awami League was in power, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, during caretaker governments. But there was a consistency throughout, which was the warmth and hospitality of the Bangladeshi people. So even though I've retired from service, in this new chapter in my life, I'm still honored to have the opportunity to engage with the people of Bangladesh.
John, you did wonderful job here, and you was in Dhaka for 3 times. Is there anything you would like to share with us that you could not share due to your job regulation when you was in embassy?
But I don't blame people who don't fully understand the role of a diplomat. There are many people in different professions, and unless you're in that profession, maybe it's hard for you to fully understand what the job is. So oftentimes I would interact with individuals when I was serving as a diplomat, and I might have a certain viewpoint that I was sharing with them. And I think sometimes it's hard for people to understand that American diplomats, or any country's diplomats' job, is to faithfully explain, the policies and views of the government. So if there was a Democratic administration in power or a Republican administration, the policies might change. And from one day to another, I was here present in Bangladesh during a U.S. presidential election and a transition. And when the Obama administration came in, it had different viewpoints than the administration that it had replaced. And some of my friends and counterparts might have been a bit confused because I'd gone to see them one day and I was explaining a certain viewpoint, and then just a few days later I saw them and I had a different viewpoint. But what I was doing was reflecting the views of the administration. What people very rarely saw was what John Danielich as an individual thought. One of the unique opportunities that I have now returning to Bangladesh in this new capacity as a retired diplomat is that I can speak my mind, that I can share what I believe. Now, I represent an organization, Right to Freedom,
Yes.
and there are times at which I speak on behalf of Right to Freedom. But many times, including when I'm sitting here with you, I'm free to share with you what I truly believe. So it's less the fact that there are any great secrets that I can share, but what I would say is that at times it is important to realize that there's a difference perhaps between somebody when they're serving as a diplomat and then when they've left the service.
Sheikh Hasina was in power 16 years, almost 16 years, and he, on her time, terrorism was growing. Do you think that Sheikh Hasina played a game in the name of terrorism?
So I wouldn't say that all of the cooperation between the United States. Yeah. So again, what I would say is, as I mentioned, there were different definitions of what was terrorism, and certainly there were different priorities given to different issues. What I think was perhaps what you're alluding to is that what the Bangladesh government attempted to do was to elevate the importance of our counterterrorism cooperation above all of the other issues, to an extent to which I don't think corresponded with what U.S. interests were. And I'll give you an example. The U.S. had a strong interest in supporting democracy and human rights.
Yes.
And at times, what the government of Bangladesh professed to or purported to be fighting against terrorism, the United States saw more as an effort to, deny people their basic, democratic and civil rights. So this became an area of friction. For example, the Rapid Action Battalion. It's true that the United States over the years had cooperated at various times with the Rapid Action Battalion, but that doesn't mean that we endorsed everything that the Rapid Action Battalion did. And when it became clear to the United States government that the Rapid Action Battalion had been involved in incidents which constituted gross violations of human rights, the United States responded. We responded by calling this out publicly, including in our human rights reports, and ultimately by imposing sanctions on those who we deemed responsible for those human rights abuses. That's not to denigrate the work of everyone in the Rapid Action Battalion at all times, but certainly there were individuals and incidents which, in our viewpoint, crossed a line, and consistent with U.S. law, we were required to take action.
Let me ask another question about interim government.
Sure.
There is a narrative by Bangladesh Awami League that interim government came to power, that with that agreement that they will hand over Saint Martin to the USA, and the USA will create a military base on that island. Do you have any comment on that?
Sure. Well, I think this is a prime example of the misinformation and disinformation and conspiracy theories that have circulated. This wasn't the first, and I'm sure it won't be the last time in which this happened. I remember it several other times during my career. There were relatively innocuous U.S. engagements in Bangladesh which were blown totally out of proportion. It's no secret that the U.S. has security interests in the Indo-Pacific region, and the U.S. has a number of security partnerships. The U.S. military works very closely with their Bangladeshi counterparts, including in the Indian Ocean region, in the maritime domain. But the suggestion that the U.S. for some reason would covet St. Martin Island as a military base is just absurd. Anyone who knows anything about security or about military know that St. Martin Island is in no ways the ideal location for the U.S. to have a military presence. So the U.S. has never sought and never would
It's also
seek.
Not ideal location.
Right, it's not an ideal location. There's a lot about it. As far as I know, the U.S. is not in the market for a military base. But even if it were, St. Martin Island would not be the place that they would look. But there's a kind of a deeper-seated issue here, and it has to do with the previous regime. At some fundamental level, the previous...
But former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina raised that question again and again when she was in power.
Sure. Yeah, well, what I was going to say, at some fundamental level, the former Prime Minister and her party have made it a habit over the years of blaming the U.S. or pointing to the U.S. when they want to distract attention maybe from a domestic issue.
And still now they're doing that.
Right, exactly. So if you look at, I started by saying that in 1971 the United States was on the wrong side. I've admitted that. Many other American officials have talked about that. We were talking before about Archer K. Blood, who was the U.S. Consul General in Dhaka in 1971, and he very courageously, along with his staff, publicly dissented from U.S. policy. So even at the time, many Americans, including American diplomats, knew that the U.S. was taking the wrong approach. But that's not to say that after 1971, every U.S. action should be looked at through that same lens. So for example, when it comes to the events of August of 1975 and the assassination of the former Prime Minister's father, again, she and others in her party are very quick to blame the United States for that. So there's a whole conspiracy theory industry around the events of August 1975. And then if you look at other events over the years, whether it was the grenade attack involving the former Prime Minister, whether you look most recently at the events of last summer, that the former Prime Minister and her supporters tend to see or blame the United States for this. They do so without any evidence. None of these claims stand up to any scrutiny. She is simply, and they are simply trying to distract attention from the real issues, which often have involved their own failings.
John, with your permission, I want to ask you another question. That
Sure.
Sojibodeh Joy, son of the former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, he claimed that you threatened several times him, and he made it clear on a public program Do you have any comment? Did you threaten him?
Sure. So I'm aware of these allegations, these
Okay.
accusations. I've known the former Prime Minister's son for a number of years, and we've had many interactions. With regard to the specific allegations, they've been proven baseless. In addition to the video that you are referring to and the comments that he made, these allegations were repeated in a more formal manner to the U.S. Senate's Judiciary Committee when Senator Grassley was chairing this in a previous administration. These allegations were made in naming me. They were thoroughly investigated by the Senate Judiciary Committee. The Senate Judiciary Committee referred these to the Department of State. The Department of State thoroughly looked at these issues, and in both cases they found that these allegations, these accusations were baseless. The background of this is pretty clear, that the former Prime Minister's son and others seeking to distract attention from their own shortcomings were looking for a scapegoat.
When Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting USA last time, and few journalists, fellow journalists were with him, and one journalist, yes, from India, he raised a question in front of President Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that is your deep state. USA had a deep state, and they were involved with the fall of the Sheikh Hasina. Is this true?
So there's a whole industry in India which traffics in misinformation and disinformation. It involves elements of the Indian ruling party, it involves elements of the media and the establishment. So this is a narrative that they certainly kind of settled on, which was very similar to a narrative being spread by the supporters of the former Prime Minister, that somehow the July Revolution was a foreign deep state regime change plot. Again, there's no evidence for this, and anyone who knows anything about Bangladesh knows that the July Revolution was homegrown, that the people of Bangladesh controlled their destiny. And from my personal interactions with U.S. government officials, while they were monitoring the situation closely in Bangladesh at the time, they had no foreknowledge, they had no involvement in these events. As for Prime Minister Modi and his meeting with President Trump, there were many supporters of the previous regime or elements of the establishment in India who were hoping that President Trump's inauguration would signal a significant change in U.S. policy towards Bangladesh. They thought that a relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump would result in a shift in U.S. policy. I think over these past several months they've been very disappointed that that hasn't happened. That President Trump clearly in that press conference that you mentioned refused to be drawn into this conspiracy theory. That President Trump frankly didn't want to even discuss this or answer the question. He gave Prime Minister Modi the opportunity to answer the question, and he also declined. So again, I think this was something that was more of an element of wishful thinking.
Right now Sheikh Hasina in India, and her son in USA, and he is now US passport holder. And on the other hand, her daughter, Saima Putul, already been closed from who? So how you see the future of Bangladesh Awami League?
So I think there's a couple of different questions there, and ultimately the people of Bangladesh and Bangladeshi voters will decide the future of the Awami League or any political party. But I've gone on record publicly as saying that it's my belief that Sheikh Hasina's days of political activity in Bangladesh are over, that she'll either die in prison or she'll die in exile. I see no way in which she's going to return to political office in Bangladesh. From what I know of Bangladesh and the Bangladeshi people, they'll never allow that to happen. I also don't see any path for her immediate family members to return to Bangladesh in a political role. Ultimately, those who constitute the Awami League will have to decide about their future, whether they will reclaim their party, whether their party will have reforms and new leadership and reclaim a place in the Bangladeshi political system. But I don't think personally that there's any role for former Prime Minister or her family.
Bangladeshi people have few issues about US's foreign policy regarding Palestine, regarding other places in the world, across the world. But in case of freedom of speech, democracy and human rights, I think Bangladeshi people also love these things. How do you see the future of these two countries, future of bilateral relationship?
Sure. So I see a bright future for the U.S. and Bangladesh relationship, and my first thought would be that the relationship between the U.S. and Bangladesh is much more than the relationship between our two governments. It's really a relationship between our two people. It's a relationship between our private sectors. There are relationships between our universities. There are relationships between very different segments of our society. You mentioned the values of democracy and human rights. These are deeply held values and beliefs in the United States, and again of the American people, who certainly value their freedoms. In terms of government policies and priorities change. One administration may prioritize human rights and democracy promotion. Other administrations may prioritize other things. So this is normal and this is natural. Even within the government, the executive branch may have a certain viewpoint, but the Congress, both the party in the minority and the party in the majority, may also have their views that they want to express. So this is the beauty, the diversity of America. So if I look at the U.S. and Bangladesh relationship, I see a remarkable continuity over the past 55 years, in which the United States has worked closely with Bangladesh to promote socioeconomic development, to build a stronger partnership. And I see this continuing. As I noted, it's continued during the Trump administration. I have no doubt that it will continue forward. Does that mean we will always agree? Absolutely not. I don't always agree with my wife, but we have a wonderful relationship. I don't always agree with my government. But I think what is most important is that when we disagree, when I disagree with my wife, when I disagree with my government, when the United States government disagrees with the Bangladesh government, that there be a process whereby we can share our different viewpoints and we can find some common ground. Or in some cases we'll agree to disagree, but we'll work together in other areas where we can.
You are a very experienced diplomat, and still now you are serving as one kind of diplomat. I think I should say diplomacy of human rights. So I just want to know that do you have any comment about Bangladesh foreign policy?
Again, I've been critical in the past of those who refer back to Bangladesh's independence and the first foreign policy principles of friendship towards all, malice towards none. I think frankly that's kind of a meaningless policy because it doesn't really say anything. But we exercise that. Well, what I would say is
only India.
Yeah.
We
what
have
I would say is
India.
Friendship to all, malice towards none. It's a platitude. It's not a policy. I think what you need to do though is look at the specifics. So certainly, the United States needs. So certainly Bangladesh needs to maintain good relationships with a number of key partners, whether it be the United States, whether it be China, whether it be European partners. So Bangladesh is going to have relations, but that doesn't mean every relationship is equal. And I think that's where things, maybe need some clarification. There are times in foreign policy where you have to make choices. There are times when there are two interests that can't be reconciled. And Bangladesh has to make those choices consciously. Bangladesh is a sovereign nation, and at the end of the day, Bangladesh will make those decisions. But it should do so conscious of where its interests really lie. So as the U.S. looks at Asia-Pacific region or looks at relationship with Bangladesh, I'm sure those in policy recognize that there's a competition, that China and others are also trying to develop their relationships with Bangladesh. And it's a competition. And I think that from the United States perspective, the United States should try to be Bangladesh's partner of choice, to provide Bangladesh with options that are better than other countries provide.
We are so pleased to you for giving us time, and I hope our audience will enjoy this episode. And we talked already during about Sheikh Hasina's role, and on the other hand US policy and India's role in Bangladesh. Thank you, John, for joining with us.
Great. No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. We discussed with John F. Danielech about human rights, about democracy in Bangladesh, about foreign policy, about July uprising. We are thankful to everyone that you are watching this special episode.